Hi everyone, and welcome to our fifth session of our Kentico virtual conference, Kentico Azure virtual conference. I appreciate everyone who stuck with us through the previous sessions. I guarantee it's only going to get more interesting. This session is really, I think, an important part of understanding Kentico and Windows Azure. What we've done, as we said earlier, is we tried to take it from the pull the onion or peel the onion approach and drill down, and we're kind of now getting what I'd call towards the center of the onion. What you're going to really want to pay attention here, I think, is some of the best practices and things. We've been getting a lot of questions where I'm thinking this session is actually going to help answer those questions. Once we're done here, we have two more sessions. We have an advanced development with Windows Azure by Brian Soltis. And then last is just common questions and answers for Windows Azure and Kentico CMS. And today's presenter, or the session's presenter, is Dominik Pinter, who's the group product manager for SaaS and Cloud for Kentico, and is really I'm going to call it the brains behind the engineering and the architecture. And it's his team that really worked to pull this off. So we're lucky enough to have Dominik, who's going to speak at this section around best practices, but we're also going to have his team available, as well as hopefully our MVPs available for the final common questions for Windows Azure. So without further ado, Dominik, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tom. So good morning, afternoon, evening, if you are listening from Czech Republic, because I'm based in Czech Republic, so it's 10 p.m. here. Okay, so in terms of best practices, I created this simple scenario on which I'm going to show you how you should basically develop, configure, and deploy your Kentico CMS or EMS site into Windows Azure Cloud. So here is the scenario. Let's say you need to run a new website and you decided to go with Kentico CMS. And also you decided that site will be hosted on Windows Azure. You also want to use platform as a service model. Guys in previous sessions already covered this, but you choose platform as a service because you don't have any legacy components. It's a brand new website, so you don't need to go with virtual machines and infrastructure as a service, but still you want to have as much control as you can, so you don't want to go with Kentico Plus or Windows Azure websites. On the other hand, you don't want to maintain your operating system, so that's why you basically chose platform as a service model, cloud services with Windows Azure. So this is the scenario, and let's get started. First of all, I'm going to show you and tell you a few hints and few best practices regarding to development. So first of all, which project type should you use for development of your new website? Because you want to do everything right. That's one side. And the other side is that you still want to be productive and effective. Also, important thing, coding best practices. Which APIs you should use, how you should do customizations, how you should use third-party library, etc. Also, once you develop the site, you want to add there some production data, some content, some images, and again, you need to know how to do it and how to do it right at first. The next thing is where to store files. You have basically with Windows Azure several options. Regarding to Kentico CMS, you can store files in database and you can store them in file system. So let's see what's better, and yeah, basically what's better. And also I want to mention a little bit how you can basically achieve better or the best performance. So let's start with some demos. What I have here, I have one Kentico which is installed as website project, and I have also Kentico installed as a Windows Azure project type. I definitely recommend you to start your developing even for Windows Azure with website project. The problem is that if you start with Windows Azure project type, you will be running locally on emulator, and the emulator is really hard on resources. So even though I have I don't know 8 cores and 16 gigs of RAM, it's still running quite slowly. So if you do your development completely using Windows Azure project type and running local emulator, it will be really slow. So just to show you that, I stopped my deployment and start again, and here you will see that even though I didn't change anything, it still compiles all the site, and then it starts Windows Azure emulator, and even if you need to change just one line of code, you always need to go through it. So as I said, it's really not a good or productive way how to do things. So definitely let's start with website. As you sure know, website is compiled on the fly. It's compiled by the directories, so files are compiled according to your needs, and everything is much faster. When you change one file, it will be compiled only that file, and etc. So definitely start with that. But you may say that yeah, it's good, but you know, I want to develop for Windows Azure and you know for SQL Azure, and if I do something wrong, I wouldn't know about that and stuff like that. I would reply, no, that's not true, because with Kentico, even if it's a website project, you can start using SQL Azure from the beginning. Here in this demo, I use same connection string for in webconfig for Windows Azure project and for web project. This connection string doesn't lead to SQL Azure, but it leads to my local database, but it could. There's nothing wrong with that. You can basically at the beginning put your database to SQL Azure and connect your website from there. Another thing which I want to show you is to how you can connect from your website to Windows Azure Blob Storage. So again, from the very beginning, you could be connected to Windows Azure Blob Storage, and you can work with Windows Azure Blob Storage even from website project. So after you stop the development and you are ready to deploy, all you need to do is to take your code changes from website project and put them into CMS Azure. Yeah, it's some additional work, but I really believe that it's worth it. So this is first hint, and now I will show you some coding best practices or some coding recommendations. So I have here one simple web part. I already wrote it to not waste your time too much. So what is here? I have simple text box, button, and literal control. Here in the code behind, on the button click, I take some file which will be in the root, and it's called my simple.txt. I add there some content from the text box, and also on the load of the web part, I show all the content from that file. So it could be like really simple logging system, simple nodes, or something like that. As you can see here, I use here standard API, but it is not System.io, it's our CMS.io API. I think that Tom already covered this in his session, but in case you missed that session, basically CMS.io is layer between Kentico business logic and between file access, and this layer has implementation for standard file system, which internally uses System.io namespace, and it has also implementation for Windows Azure, for Azure Storage, Azure Blob Storage, and when you run on Windows Azure, the files are stored through the CMS.io automatically to Windows Azure Blob Storage. So first and most important thing, when you work somewhere and access the file system, use CMS.io. As you can see here, the API is pretty much the same, and only thing which is different is really that namespace. So I have this web part. So here, this is my website application. I go to CMS Site Manager and register the web part to show you how it works and that it actually works. Okay, so here I'm in development, and I create here a new web part. I call it simple node. This is the path to that file. Okay. So I have here registered my web part. I can now go to CMS desk, to content, and add this web part to some page. So let's put it here into home page. Also, I want to show you this is the blob storage. I'm connected from my website to this blob storage. So here is the root of my website, and also the second project, the CMS Azure project, is also connected to the same storage. Okay, so let's add here, for example, web part. Text and images. Okay, I don't have any additional properties, so I just add that. Okay, so this is my web part. So I write some simple text. Hello, Azure conference. Okay. Send it. Okay. I have some bug in the web part with loading of text, but it's not too important in this moment. But when I click refresh, I see here this file, so it works. And also, I will show you later that when I add this web part to this second project, the web part will be get the same text from that same file. So it's not that hard, and it's really simple and effective way how to develop your web parts and your code. So this is one thing. Second thing is SQL Azure. SQL Azure is slightly different than standard SQL Server. It's not that different. The differences, there are very few differences, but still there are some. So I recommend you from the beginning start with SQL Azure. It will be a little bit slower because the database will be in maybe, I don't know, 100, 200, 300 kilometers from you, maybe more, maybe less, but still you can get the errors of SQL Azure when you wrote your SQL scripts. So this is another good practice. Also, one more thing, when you use some third-party libraries, please make sure that these libraries can run on Windows Azure. Maybe you would need some additional configuration of your website in order to make it work there. Maybe installation of some additional packages, some extensions to .NET, something like that. It's not that hard to achieve usually these things. Usually you need to put these files, these extensions as a part of your package and then install them as a startup task. Startup task is simple routine which could be started after your instance in Windows Azure starts. So this is usually the way. Also, when your library uses file system, access the file system, let's say that you have some library which adds some watermark to images or something like that. There are two ways how you can achieve that this library will work, or three. First option is that library supports Windows Azure out of the box. This is usually not the case. Second one thing is that library supports streams. If you work with library with support streams, it's not a problem. You basically create stream using CMS.io and put this stream into the library. Library processes the stream and returns back to you. Third option is that the library is some sort of extensible. So basically, we use that approach with Lucene.net, which is library for our Smart Search module in Kentico. And in this case, that library has some default implementation for accessing file system, but we override this default implementation with our own implementation, and this our implementation uses again CMS.io. So this is about the coding. One more thing regarding to this. If you need to call some initialization code, we have one special class which is called Azure Init. In this class, we init Kentico CMS itself. We connect some event handlers, etc. And this class has two methods: application start init and begin request init. If you need to call some code for initialization of your project at the application start, I recommend you to put it there after our code. And if you need to run something at the beginning of the first request, you can put it there. So this is about the coding best practices. Now let's say that we developed our site and we want to start add our production data, some images, some content, etc. So how you should do it? Really important thing is that at this point you really need to have configured SQL database to the SQL Azure or to the final or production database, or if you don't, you would need to migrate somehow the data, but this process is always complicated, so let's not do that. Let's go with production database. And second one thing is to have configured correctly Windows Azure storage credentials, mainly these keys, sorry. And also at this point you should decide whether you want to access your files directly from the blob storage, from the content delivery network, or from through the Kentico CMS. Every of these approaches has some advantages and disadvantages. So if you decide to go with Kentico approach, with getting files through Kentico, it's easiest way, and there's nothing wrong with that, except that your site will not be too much faster, because all the requests to the files must go through the application. So if you want to get better performance from images loading, media files loading, I would recommend you to go with direct blob access or CDN. The difference between these two is that CDN has some additional cost implications, but on the other hand, the endpoints are distributed all around the world. In terms of blob storage, it's cheaper. There are no additional costs, but still, but you have only one single point from where our images and media files are got. So, if you decide to go, for example, with direct blob access, you just need to set up this setting key, CMS Azure Public Container, and set it to true. This says that this container, CMS Azure, has set permissions to this level, public read access for blobs only, which means that if someone tries to get file from blob storage and the request is unauthenticated, the blob storage returns the image. If you set up to no public read access, the blob storage would return that resource not found, and it wouldn't return the image back to the browser, to the user who did the request. So one more important thing about this: do not change this manually. Do it always through the Kentico, because if you change that manually, Kentico at the near start of application change that back according to this application setting key. This key is for setting up URL for Content Delivery Network. Content Delivery Network has this form in Windows Azure. Okay, so now you configured the storage for public access, but you're not quite happy about it, because in this way you basically exposed all your data to anyone in the world, which could not be the best way how you can do it. So that's why we have this little guy. This is the one piece of code where I basically add my event handler for application start, and here in this commented piece of code, I will go and uncomment it for a while. So here I create storage provider for CMS IO. This storage provider object is basically it basically represents the implementation for CMS IO layer. So I create implementation for Azure storage. I map that this folder will use this storage or this provider. So this folder will be stored to Windows Azure, but also all the other folders will be stored to Windows Azure. So what's the point? Point is that here I can do some additional configuration, and here I can set up that through this property custom root path that this folder will be stored to different container. By default, all files are stored to CMS storage. So by this line of code, I say that this folder will be stored to media folder, and also I can here specify CDN endpoint. I can here also specify if this container should be accessed by public users, by public requests. So in this way, I can set up that only media folder or only some certain folder in directory will be accessed by public users. So in this way, you can distribute or serve some files through the CDN, through the public endpoints, while other parts of the applications are secured by Windows Azure permission level. So this is again the way how this can be done. So I have all my configuration done. So now let's go and add some image to content. Okay, so this is still that website project, CMS desk. Okay. Again, I'll run this Windows Azure project. Media. Video gallery. So I didn't set up content delivery network, but I did set up direct access. I have here one sample folder with one sample picture. Okay, and you can see that direct path goes to Kentico storage, blobcore.net, etc. And this link points directly to Windows Azure Blob Storage. So when someone will want to get this image, the image will be got from blob storage directly instead of going through web application. Okay, resource is not found, which is kind of strange. But I guess, yeah, the problem is that I didn't configure the second application, the CMS Azure application, to public access. So after I started this deployment, the permission level was changed. So that's why we've got this error. So I said that you should be aware of it, and unfortunately I showed you that I didn't pay attention to my advices either. So okay, so this is how you can basically get the files. Also, the important thing is whether you should store files into storage or into database. First thing is that database is way much expensive than storage. So if you compare 1 gigabyte of data in database and 1 gigabyte of data in storage, storage is I don't know, 10 times less expensive or something like that. That's first thing. Second thing is that when you store data into database, you cannot distribute files directly from Windows Azure Blob Storage or from the CDN. So your performance will be much, much lower. Okay, another important or interesting thing I want to show you is that by default you can get images and media files from media library directly through CDN or through the blob storage. But if you want to use CDN distribution for other files as well, you just need to go here and click redirect files to disk. This basically does the trick that if file exists in file system, which means on Azure in Windows Azure Blob Storage, the link is to the file is redirected to Windows Azure Blob Storage instead of getting image through the web application. So this is first thing which helps you in performance. Second thing is our output caching. Output caching is not related to Windows Azure deployment, but I want to mention this because this is really the thing which increases your performance a lot, and I think that people who are thinking or going to the cloud are very interested in performance. So I just want to mention this output caching. Basically, it saves output HTML after Kentico process the file, process the page, and if someone goes on that page for the second time, the Kentico serves the output HTML instead of processing whole page again. This is the main principle. All right, so I covered development. So now let's go and convert the site to Azure project. I also want to mention something about web farms, but I will not cover this too deeply because we are already running out of time. And I also mentioned a few words about choosing right session state provider and also where you should put your configuration files. So, conversion to Windows Azure. I have started my Windows Azure deployment, so this is it in emulator. This error message indicates that I have same database, but web part is not there. So that's why it cannot load it. But when I, for example, go to CMS desk and I go to media files, as you can see, the Kentico in emulator is much slower. And again, mainly cause of this is that the emulator is really hard on resources, and that's why I recommended the websites for development, even for Windows Azure. Okay, So it will take a while because this is the brand new start and it must to store some data into cache. So I just stop that and show you how you can convert or migrate the web part. Here on the right I have directory where I have simple node code. Here on the left side, this is the Windows Azure project. So I just copied the files, and then I go here, here. I just add here the parts, text, and there it is. So I think that this file should be enough. Simple node, okay, so I need to add second file as well. Simple node, okay. Oh, sorry. Well, this should work, and I don't know why it is not working right now. But basically, the problem will be that I have wrong file name for this code file, so it should be simple node iscx.cs instead of only cs. But then I just need to convert the file to web application, and then when I start the deployment, the web part will be part of the deployment, and it would show me, it would show the same result. Okay, I stopped that. So as I said, we shared database, we shared storage, so only thing which was missing was the code base. Okay, so this was the conversion. Now, web farm notification mechanism. We have two mechanisms in web farm. For Windows Azure, default one is database web farm mechanism. With this web farm mechanism, you basically there is a single thread which has infinite loop in it, and it checks database for every second, and if there are some tasks to process, the instance just processes the file. The old web farm synchronization mechanism worked. The main principle was that servers are notified each other, and when configuration was changed, which is what could be changed quite often on Windows Azure, it just stopped work. So best practice or best solution here is to use new synchronization mechanism, which is default one on Windows Azure. In case of session state storage provider, when you want to run on multiple multiple instances on Azure, you just you need to change your session state provider for memory in prods session state provider, because every machine has own in prods memory session state provider. So you have three other options. First one is a Fabric session state provider. In case of a Fabric session state provider, it has some additional costs, and also we've had some strange issues with that. So I wouldn't go with that, but you can choose between SQL Azure, and Kentico uses SQL Azure as a database anyway, so it's not a problem, and it's simple change in webconfig file. Also, you can go with web role cache session state provider. These two are both recommended, and it's really your personal preference. But that's all I wanted to mention here. Okay, so where should you put your configuration files? So let's go back, and here I have in my website some application keys which are in webconfig file, which is standard storage for these application keys. In case of Windows Azure, I have also webconfig, and I can also put my configuration here, or I can put it here into service configuration file. And now, what's the difference? What's the best practice? Service configuration file is the only file which could be modified during the deployment on Windows Azure. If you want to change something in webconfig, you need to redeploy your application. It takes some time. It might cause also some downtime of your website. So I really recommend you to use service configuration file for all application keys and also for connection string. It's very easy to maintain this instead of webconfig. So let's continue, and now few words about the deployment and maintenance. Brian in previous session covered a lot of deployment, so just to mention, how should you deploy in case of cloud services? With Kentico, you have several different options. First option is to go here and just package, and then upload manually through the portal. It's not the best way how to do that, because it contains some manual work, and as you know, programmers usually, as me personally, we are all lazy, so we don't want to do things manually. Also, you do it through the browser, so you can get some timeouts and stuff. Or you can deploy using Visual Studio. With Visual Studio, if you develop your site and you want to do your updates very often, it's really great way, and I definitely recommend it. We also have two other options which are kind of special for Kentico CMS. We have PowerShell script, which can help you in case that you have some build server and you want to do some automatization. And you have also Kentico Installation Manager, which could be quite useful in case that you, for example, don't have Visual Studio on your machine, etc. So this was the first thing. Second thing is about remote desktop. So in Windows Azure, when you deploy your configuration, when you deploy your Kentico into Windows Azure Cloud Services, you can enable or disable remote desktop. Definitely, best practice, enable it. The Windows Azure in one way could be the very black box where you don't have enough information when something goes wrong. So in these cases, use remote desktop. You can connect directly to your instances. You can check IIS. You can check event viewer. So it's really nice and helpful thing, and it will save you a lot of hours in troubleshooting. Now, few words about staging and production. In Windows Azure, you have two slots, two environments. First one is staging, second one is production. Staging is for testing purposes. So when you deploy, you can first deploy to staging and then test there, and if everything is okay, you can switch to production. Again, how you can do it, or how I recommend you to do it. Definitely first deploy to staging. It's not any additional work or something, and it again can save you, because let's say that you have some website, some application, you deploy it to staging, do some testing, everything seems okay, so you do the swap, and then after, I don't know, an hour or so, the people are starting to write you emails that you have some serious bug in your in your application. If you do the swap and wait with your older and stable version for a while, you can easily do the swap again, and you have back your older stable version in production, and it really saves your day. So this is, I think, most helpful thing about the staging environment, at least for me. Okay. One of the last things I want to show you is Windows Azure dashboard. So let's find it. Windows Azure dashboard. This is the service page of Windows Azure, where you can basically find what services are running normally, if there are some interruptions in your service, if something went wrong on the Azure side. It may happen that your application running in cloud just stopped to work and you have no any clue what happened. So first, I really recommend you to go to this page and check if everything is all right on the other Azure side, and if it is, you can troubleshoot further. But it's really easy, simple, fast check, and again, it can save you an hours to figure out what's wrong and the problem. Again, as I said, it may happen that problem is on the Azure side. Last thing, and really I would say the best of the best practices, don't be afraid to ask. Windows Azure is quite young technology, and if its development is really fast, so things are changing fast and fast. So even if you know some approach, some steps which work, after a month they could just stop work, and there could be some other and new approach. So don't be afraid to ask. There are several great resources of information, and in Kentico CMS we have support department which runs 24 hours, 7 days in week. Windows Azure itself has also excellent support. There are several useful forums like MSD and Stack Overflow, so it's not a shame that you don't know something. Things are changing really frequently, so it happens to all of us. Okay, so summary. First, start development with website. You will work really fast and in effective way. Second thing, in case of custom APIs, in case of custom code, always access file system through CMS.io instead of system.io. Third, store files in file system. Fourth, store configuration in service configuration files instead of with configs. Next best practice is use CDN, use direct blob storage, use blob storage instead of database. It really increases your performance of your site. And one last thing, even with live deployments, configure remote desktops. It also helps you a lot in case of troubleshooting. So, this is all from me.
Excellent.
Tom, do we have some questions?
Let's see. Well, I don't see any in the queue. Let's see.
Okay.
Anyone have any questions? Please feel free to send them in. I know we're kind of about a minute over time. And what we'll do is, of course, thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you, Dominik, for presenting on our best practices. As we said, this was session 5. It looks like we're not done yet. There's still 6 and then session 7. So let's see, the next session coming up is Brian Soltis providing advanced development on Kentico. And then the last session is a general Q&A. Let's see, just a real quick, Dominik. This was one that I know Brian had as well. I noticed that you recommend using the website project, but what about the web application project to get started for Azure? Some quick thoughts on that, and then we can go ahead and end.
Okay, so web application project is basically the same like Windows Azure project type, with one exception. In case of Windows Azure project type, the application is running in emulator, but still with web application project, when you change just one line of code, the whole web application project must be compiled. So it basically takes a little bit more time. With Kentico CMS, we have many files, so it takes longer time, and again, you a little bit waste your time. So that's why for development, I really think that website is the fastest way how to achieve things.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Dominik, once again. We're going to go ahead and end this session, and then we're going to pick up in another probably about 30 minutes or so for our next session on advanced development. And then Dominik will be back in our last session along with other folks for Q&A. Dominik, thanks, and we'll see everyone here in about 30 minutes, I hope. Take care.